Right, so there's Mark 1. Functionally it came out okay. Aesthetically the logos weren't brilliant. These elements here weren't thick enough for the printer to pick up basically. So I made these walls a bit thicker so that they'll print properly. And I've already put the mount on the back here with its dovetail joint. It took a bit of force to get in there. Put the countersunk bolt in and attach to the extrusion like that. It's nice and solid. So there's the Raspberry Pi all mounted. Got a network cable attached, USB connecting it to the 3D printer into the control box here. It's nice and solidly mounted. When I get the camera I will put that on there and then I can start capturing time lapse and see what it's doing as well from the office, and I can remote control it anyway. So there we go. Raspberry Pi case, 3D printed for the 3D printer, and an Elite Dangerous logo added in for good measure. Okay, so thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next video. Okay, so here we are in Fusion 360, and as usual we start with a sketch. Everything in Fusion 360 starts with a sketch. So, okay, we need to make a Raspberry Pi case, and how are we going to make sure it fits? Well, luckily the Raspberry Pi Foundation has provided, and I did a quick Google search, I think this was on their site, raspberrypi.org, they provided the dimensions for the circuit board with also the distances from the edges and stuff for the mounting holes, which is quite cool. Also where all the cutouts occur, although they put them in the center. I'm not quite sure why, but they put the center point, and then you have to kind of measure on your own Raspberry Pi to see how wide each one is, and then add a bit for tolerance. So anyway, using that as a guide, we then made a sketch similar to this. Now, I was only interested in a few bits to start with, just to make the base of the Raspberry Pi case, and then we could make the top potentially on another sketch, offsetting it off of this one. But I did put the I/O part on there, and also the Pi camera slot, ribbon cable slot that sits in this area here, and then we've got our various cutouts for the USB ports, which are in this area here, and the LAN port, which is here, and then obviously we've got our video out, I think it is, or sound out, and then we've got also the HDMI and the power, and then most importantly, of course, otherwise we'll never get anything running on the thing, we need the SD card slot at the back here. So we did that sketch, and all we then needed to do was essentially extrude the bits that we needed. So we extruded a base, and I think I made it 3mm thick. Oh, actually, before we do that, I also left, I think it was a whole millimetre all around the edge, just because apparently Raspberry Pi boards, not particularly known for their tolerances, not quite sure why, but anyway, I left a millimetre around the edge just to give us you know, some room, as it were, just in case it didn't fit correctly. So extrude the base, and then we just started extruding the walls that we needed, which gives us essentially our base piece, and it's already starting to look like a case. Then extruded up further for these cutouts on the side for the various ports, bring them all up to the same level there. Then I did some standoffs inside the case just to bring those above, and then we got another sketch in place. Now, you may remember that I did a sketch for the extrusion on my cockpit, if you've been watching many of my videos, and all I did essentially was transfer this over and re-sized it for the extrusion on the printer, because it's the same kind of extrusion, which was really lucky. So essentially did a sketch there. Let me just turn this first one off so we don't clutter things up. And then I did another sketch on this plane here and did essentially a dovetail. So what we'll do is we can extrude the dovetail out here, and you'll notice that the sketch has got some gaps in it so that we can have a bit of tolerance for the printer, so we're not forcing stuff in. Made essentially a new plate inside there, and then extruded up from that plate to match the extrusion on the actual 3D printer itself, and also did a taper when I extruded up. So one of the options, let's just have a quick look at that. I'll show you that. There you go, it's got a 5-degree taper, so what that means is we can locate that in there. I'm going to use a bolt anyway, an M5 bolt, to screw this onto the extrusion end on the printer, but it means that we can essentially tighten this into it and it will get more rigid as it goes in, but it does allow us to get it into the aluminium extrusion to start with. Now initially I had the Raspberry Pi orientated like this, and I didn't actually want to do that because although it looks really cool it's actually conflicting with the Z-axis on the printer itself, so I had to reorientate it like this. Now whilst that doesn't too much matter, because obviously this is a you know, it doesn't change any of this geometry because the aluminium extrusion is symmetrical in 2 directions. It did mean that my logo, which I'll show you in a second, was wrong. Lo and behold, let's do that. So we've got our Elite Dangerous logo, and basically what I'm going to do is cut the Elite Dangerous logo into the front and the back of the case, and basically I swiped this sketch off of the CNC engraving I did in my acrylic case window for my PC. So essentially reused that sketch, copied and pasted it into here, resized it because it was obviously massive when I first put it in, resized it, and then I had to change a few bits, so I had to run some offsets. So if you click on O or press O and then click on a, oh no, we need to edit the sketch before we can do that and show you. Press O like that, and then I think it was 0.2 or something like that. Did an offset which then just made the holes, if you like, thinner for the actual logo and thickened up the parts that were going to these areas here. Yeah, that area there, because the printer wouldn't be able to print them if they're too thin. So that's one logo done, and we extruded that through as a cut. You can see that looking pretty cool. And then we did a sketch essentially following or copying the sketch on the other side, but this time what we did is we drew in where the LAN port and the 2 USB ports are going to sit, and also copied over a smaller version of the Elite Dangerous logo here, and had to mess around with this a little bit, and the reason for that is it doesn't want to be conflicting with the I/O or the Pi camera port, which is kind of in this area. So let's just switch that off a second, declutter the view. So first of all, just did a quick extrude to make the plate, and that's obviously a new body rather than joining it, otherwise we'd only have a one-piece case we couldn't get a Pi into. Then what I did is extruded the bottom. Right, so this extrude here then extrudes this lip down so that the top can locate on the base, if you like, and also did a corresponding there, and you can see this ledge here around there, so that means the top can then essentially snap into the base, and it should just clip together because the tolerances are quite tight on it. So that's that piece done. Then it was a case of extruding, cutting for the I/O and the camera port, and then finally we extruded out and cut our Elite Dangerous logo out. Now of course that logo could be anything on there, but I thought it was quite fitting considering David Braben, who is the CEO of Frontier Developments, is also, I believe, one of the founders of the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which developed and got the Raspberry Pi out onto the market. So I thought that was fitting. Okay. Then what I needed to do was cut the hole in the bottom of this. Let me just get rid of some of these sketches. There you go. So needed to extrude a hole through the mount, and also needed to go through the body. So we've got a couple of extrudes there. Then we needed another sketch, and that was just to provide us with a lip, because actually what I needed to do was just deepen this, if you like, a little bit and make this dovetail thicker, make the base thicker, because it was a little bit flimsy after a test print of this. So I just redesigned the mount a little bit, and then did another sketch on the bottom here to cut a bigger hole and do like a big chamfer into it. There you go. So there's like a big countersink in there, because the M5 bolt has obviously we got to make sure that that screws deeply enough into this countersink that it's not going to touch the bottom of the Raspberry Pi, otherwise it might short something out. Then we used a bit of chamfering and filleting here and there just to round off the corners of the Pi on the top, give it a nice rounded appearance, and again at the bottom. So there we have our case, and then it was just a case of excuse the pun, printing it out and mounting it on the machine.